All right. Thank you for being here, everybody, and also online. I'm going to tell you something about the NTA 8195. And that doesn't say a lot, does it? So I'm going to try to explain really shortly, briefly, what we do as NEN, the Dutch Standardization Institute, and what the Netherlands Technical Agreement, that's what NTA stands for, actually means for the work that all of you are doing. I don't know if you can read this in the back. Standardization is the process by which we bring all sorts of experts together on all sorts of topics, and then together they can agree on something about safety, or something technical, or maybe something about sustainability. And together agree on what do we think is actually sustainability, or what do we think is circularity. So as NEN, we provide a neutral platform. We are not the experts on the content, we are the experts on this formal process. And as the Dutch Standardization Institute, we are the only institute that can do this in the Netherlands. Every country has their own formal standardization institute. And together we unite in ISO. So maybe you've heard of that. Maybe you've heard of ISO 9000 or other ISO standards. ISO is basically a gathering of all these national standardization institutes. That's on an international level, and then on a European level we also have CEN, and CEN is the European cooperation between the European institutes. We are a private organization, so we are not part of the government, and we make sure in that sense that we are the most neutral that we can be. And then the standards that we make, they are voluntary. So they're not part of legislation, they're not part of regulation, they are just an agreement by the market to voluntarily oblige to the requirements that are put in the standard. In the light of circular textile, we have one expert group who has been working on the Dutch Technical Agreement, the Netherlands Technical Agreement. And last year this standard was published. We had a large group of stakeholders. So we had producers, government, NGOs, universities, everybody gathered together. Everybody who knew a little bit about circular textile was there to talk about what actually is circular textile. And we did that so we could move on to the next step. So this year we started with a certification scheme, which means that we will make rules on how to apply the standard. And if you apply the standard correctly, you can get a certificate or a label on your product. So we're working on that right now. That's all within the Netherlands. We used all the content that we created to move forward to this European group, CEN, in the TC, CEN-TC. TC stands for Technical Committee on Textiles. We created a new working group where all the European stakeholders together can work, move on further with the work that we have prepared in the Netherlands. All of this is an open process, so we've worked on this so far, but at every point in time, any new stakeholder can start to join the process. So if you think, hey, why haven't I heard of this before? Don't worry, there's still enough space. The process that we start this fall is going to take at least 3 years. So it's going to take at least 3 years to come from this Dutch standard to a European standard. So there's enough time for you to still join if you think, hey, I want to say something about this, or I don't agree with any of the content that will follow. So the objective of the group was not to create a classification. We weren't going to say one thing is better than the other. We don't want to like get into all sorts of ethical discussions of what is best. We just wanted to make an objective categorization of all the types of circular activity that you can have in the textiles industry. We needed clear definitions. What do we actually mean when we say circularity? What do we mean when we say recycle? What do we mean when we say chemical? We wanted to, in the past couple of presentations here, they also said we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to gather as much information as possible on existing standards, on existing laws and regulations, and already accepted, like generally accepted definitions in the sector. But what we did was gather all that information, be as objective as possible, and be as transparent as possible, and thereby also preventing greenwashing. If you say you are circular, we now have a standard that you can use to actually explain what you mean. So the starting points, also, again, I don't think that you can read what's on the right, but it's probably a familiar picture from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We want to minimize material waste, optimize material use, keep products and materials in the value chain as long as possible, use the 4R responsibilities according to the circular butterfly from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And we wanted to put different efforts in different phases of the product, make different efforts count. So different efforts in different phases, make them visible and make them count. So yeah, the 4 R's, you probably know that the infographic is in Dutch, but it's to recycle, repair, reuse, and herfabriceren, remanufacture, thank you. It's so much easier in Dutch. Remanufacture, thank you. And we came to a list of terms and definitions speaking the same language when it comes to circular textiles, open loops, closed loops materials, multi-fiber textiles, post and pre-consumer materials. I remember the first meeting, we had a very long discussion about closed and open loop and about whether we should exclude one. Are we gonna focus with this group on one or the other? In the end, we came to this overview where we use both. We are not going to exclude any type of well, something that you might call circularity. It's still part of the terms and definitions. Then we looked at input flow, so pre-consumer materials or post-consumer materials, post-production, production waste, and open loop. So the first part was the terms and definitions, then the input flow, and then when we did that, we came to, well, it was like a matrix structure. I do realize, looking at this, we gave numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. I really want to emphasize this is not a classification, this is a categorization. So it does not mean that 1 is better than 4. It's just a way to make it readable in one picture. Maybe we should call it XYZ or somehow just take away this bias. But this is intended as a means of communication between the requesting and supplying partners. With this categorization, where we have recycle, remanufacture, repair, and reuse on the left, and on the top we have post-consumer, post-production, production waste, and open loop. And then the numbers are an indication of the possible combinations. With this, you can actually put one of those numbers on your product or in the procurement contract, and then everybody can look back into this standard and see what that means And we're all talking the same language when we use this categorization. Then the committee of experts is currently writing the certification scheme based on this overview. So how are you going to implement this standard? How are you going to implement this categorization in daily life? And the trial audits and of the certification will take place from January, starting in January. That doesn't mean that the work is finished. This is still just the first step in. We have a long way to go, but by making this first step, we have overcome a huge hurdle in this entire transition, and that's basically what this standard is about. That we can help the market move forward, make a step that without a neutral platform like the Standardization Institute wouldn't be there, so that we can move forward. And in this particular case, we are moving forward actually within certification and on the European level in Working Group 39, where Edwin Maas from Textile is the convener. And the topics under discussion are, again, terms and definitions, because we can agree in the Netherlands, but maybe on a European level, it means something completely different. And we're also going to talk about recycled content and, again, categorization and eco-design. It might seem like, why did you do everything in the Netherlands? But the documents that we have produced in the Netherlands are actually the starting point from where the Europeans can work. And it's a lot easier to shoot at something that you don't like than to write it down by yourself when you start with a blank page. So basically, I oversee all these different projects as a manager of the team. But I have two colleagues, Anne-Wil and Zara, and they are the secretaries of these projects. And they are very interested in what you think, and if you might want to add something to these standards, add something to the certification scheme. I'm really asking all of you, if you are not already part of the of the project, to meet me afterwards, and let's discuss what we can do to move even further in the circular transition. Thank you. I see one hand, all the way in the back.
Wait for posing your question, because we have the microphone that we bring to you, and people online can hear and understand your
Was it?
In the yellow.
I had a question. For the Netherlands, we determined now a norm or a standard.
Mm-hmm.
And you say that you're now busy working with on European level. Does it mean that when you have decided on European level that the Dutch standard will be revised, or?
That's a really good question, but the answer is really technical. So it depends on the type of deliverable that is produced on the European level.
Yeah.
If it's a full European standard, then indeed we actually have to retract the Dutch standard.
Okay.
So we are going to talk on the European level until we reach consensus. So as long as the Dutch stakeholders think not everything of our documents is well represented in the European standard, we keep talking. That's why it takes 3 years. So that then the goal is to have everything that we agreed on in the Netherlands actually in the new standard, in the new European standard.
Yeah, okay, but now you say certification is possible from January 2020,
Yeah.
I assume?
Based on the Dutch standard, yes.
Dutch only standard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it could mean that after a year or two you have to recertificate certificate again.
Recertify. It's going to probably take a little bit longer than that. and there's always a certain evaluation period to a certification.
And what
So I cannot really answer the number of years that it is in this case, because we're still developing the certificate.
Yeah.
But yeah, there will obviously be the need for re-evaluation after a certain number of years.
But what is your prediction? Will it change a lot?
My prediction is that it will evolve slowly, so it will not change a lot from one day to the other.
Do you think it will be revised a lot coming years?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
No.
So it is.
I think we have a really solid
go
base.
for that Dutch standard.
Yes, definitely.
Anyway.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And also to add to that, there will not be a European standard certificate, or like there will not be a European certification organization. We will still be in charge of this certification scheme, even if it becomes Europe-wide. So, yeah, it's really difficult to explain without getting very technical. But the Dutch Standardization Institute will always manage the certification, making it, you don't have to go to another party, you don't have to go to get a completely different certificate, probably maybe just a re-evaluation of the Dutch certificate that you already have.
A question from someone online. It's from Steintje Jaspers, and she asks, can we find or download this agreement and certification scheme somewhere?
Yep, so on the NEN website, if you go to nen.nl, you can find all the information on circular textile. There's a dedicated page where you can find the basics of the information and where you will be able to download the full text.
There's another question from online, also from Steintje Jaspers. There are other certification companies like Cradle to Cradle Institute or the Hague Index. Do you work together with them, or are they different?
Some are involved, some are actually in the experts committee, some are more on the sideline where we can just ask them for input when necessary. I think it's more the other way around. For example, for Cradle to Cradle, I know that they apply the ISO standards, so they apply the standards afterwards into their own certification scheme.
Any other questions in the audience?
No, also not online?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Then I thank you very much.